right, welcome back, and now the discussion begins right now. So, the public's part beating the executive and the judiciary is not something new in the country. The two arms of government has been washing their dirty laundry in public, with the executive accusing the judiciary of derailing its development plan by order that have halted key government projects. Just like his predecessor, President William Ruto has been at the loggerheads with the judiciary, terming it corrupt and vowing rather to disregard court orders that he said are motivated by corruption and impunity, a statement that has been praised and criticized in equal measures. And to help us dissect this topic is Churchill Suba, coordinator, Kenya National Civil Society. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
Churchill.
Thank you very much.
Well, when you look at the spat between the judiciary and the executive, it's really paint a bad picture of a country that has made some significant step as far as the rule of law, defense of democracy is concerned.
Yes.
Well, when you look at the accusation that the government, or rather the executive, is actually accusing the judiciary of derailing some of the government key projects, is the judiciary under attack?
Definitely, the judiciary is under attack, and that attack is completely uncalled for, in my view. It's entirely unfortunate that the president has resorted to such underhand tactics.
All right.
To delegitimize the judiciary. I also want to correct you that it is not the judiciary and the executive washing their dirty laundry. It is the president's laundry that is dirty, and extremely dirty for that matter. The judiciary has no dirty laundry to wash.
All right.
It's the executive trying to paint mud, throw mud at the judiciary.
Okay.
Because the judiciary has acted, on petitions that have been filed by citizens. You know that the judiciary does not, on its own motion, rarely does the judiciary act on its own motion.
All right.
And even when they do so in the middle of a hearing, like whenever, for example, there are presidential petitions. We have seen, the Supreme Court acting on its own motion and giving certain directives for certain actions to be done.
All right.
In this particular case, and in all these cases where, the president's projects have been put on hold, they have not been stopped, they have just been put on hold. And the president is impatient. I think it's not a good trait for a head of state to be patient, because a president in Africa, and especially in Kenya, wields so much power. So when he gets impatient, he and being the commander-in-chief, we shudder, some of us, at the kind of decisions he can make.
All right.
But, if you look at the Constitution, and more so within the context of the decisions that the courts have made,
all right,
Article 3 of the Constitution makes it an obligation of every person, even you or me, an obligation on you and me and every citizen to promote, to respect, and to defend the Constitution. And you will find that most of these cases that are before the courts, whether it is the court, the High Court, or the Court of Appeal, are cases that have been filed by citizens on very legitimate grounds that they think are right, has either been violated or is threatened with violation. And you know that Article 22 of the Constitution empowers anybody to approach the court on suspicion that a right is either being violated or is under threat of being violated or abused by anyone. And so it is on that strength that certain citizens or group of citizens have moved to court. And it doesn't have to be your right that is being violated. If you can go to court on your own behalf, and all that is under Article 22. You can go to court on behalf of others who may not be who may not have the capacity to go to court on their own behalf, or you can go to court on behalf of a group or an association. And you find all these cases have been filed within those parameters of the Constitution. Now, what are courts supposed to do when they are confronted by such petitions? Article 23 guides the courts on the kind of reliefs. And so some of the injunctions that have been issued on some of those government project and processes are contained in the Constitution. So when I see the president making a lot of noise, actually of late years, the president, to be honest, with all due respect to His Excellency, he has been talking to himself, because Kenyans are not with him on this. But he thinks that he must have his way because he's the commander-in-chief. This dress down of the court, first of all, is unconstitutional, because courts are an equal arm of government, just like the executive and the legislature. And therefore, to purport that the president, can superintend on the courts is in itself unconstitutional. And as civil society, we want to add our voice to those that are opposed to the idea of the Chief Justice meeting the president. They can admit it may be long since they had a cup of tea together. That they are allowed to take. But if it is about these decisions that have been made recently and over which the president has made a lot of noise, I think the Chief Justice is better advised that she risks contaminating the integrity of the judiciary.
And we'll even talk about this the dialogue between the president and, of course, the Chief Justice. But before that, this part between the executive and, of course, the judiciary is something that we have seen it before. Even the previous regime, led by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, remember they had some issues with the then Chief Justice David Maraga, and he accused the former president, of actually obeying court orders. And it's some sort of a circle that keep on repeating itself. And to be fair, even when you have to look at the both side of the coin, there is a point even the opposition at one point they feel disgruntled with the decision made by the court, and they feel bitter to some point, and maybe there are some words that they said that probably may have to some sort paint the judiciary a bad picture. When you look at all this, all this part between the executive and, of course, the leaders, what does it, tells us about our leaders?
I mean, when you talk about politicians, whether it's the former president, the immediate former president, opposition leader Raila Odinga, and currently we have all this part with between President Ruto and the Chief Justice and the judiciary and the courts in general. Politicians are people whose level of honesty, is always, below average. Come to think of it, the courts put aside the Building Bridges initiative because it was initiated purely on account of its initiation by the former president. And President Ruto was behind that push to get the BBI out. What does he do as soon as he's elected? He writes a memorandum to the National Assembly and the Senate. Between when the BBI was set aside and when President Ruto was elected, he had already forgotten that he was at the forefront calling for the nullification of the BBI and its outcomes. Yet, the main ground on which the BBI was, put aside by the courts was that the president cannot initiate such, fundamental constitutional reforms. It's a preserve of citizens. What does President Ruto do immediately sworn in? He writes a memo to both the National Assembly and the Senate recommending the very, very proposed amendments that were under the BBI. Now, you see now the level of dishonesty. Politicians are very dishonest. As long as it's something that gives them credit, they'll support it. But when they think it is giving somebody else credit, they'll oppose it. So President Ruto was not honest when he led a section of his supporters and Kenyans to oppose the BBI, only to revive the BBI as soon as he's elected. And that's the same context in which you want to see these comments that all these leaders make. When it serves their interests, they'll support it. When it does not, they seem to disagree. What we are concerned about is when now the president takes it a step further and says he's going to disobey. Yes, the opposition can say that we don't disagree. Of course, anybody can express their displeasure with any judgment of the court. But when you take it further and say you are not going to obey, now the problem begins from that. And more so, when you are in a position of responsibility. You see, the opposition is just, those are citizens. Okay. They may be people of influence. Raila, of course, is a person of immense influence. But he's not in a position of response. So he can express his disgruntlement with the judgment, but he's a citizen at the end of the day.
Okay.
We get more concerned when President Uhuru used to do that, and we condemned it in equal measure, especially when he refused to appoint, remember the judges?
Yeah, the 6 judges.
Judges that had been recommended for appointment to the High Court, others for promotion to the Court of Appeal and so on. We condemned him in equal measure. And so we must also condemn the current president for trying to delegitimize the courts purely on account of decisions that the courts have made. They have made accusations, of course, about corruption. But today, the deputy president had promised that he will lead the charge against Justice Maina. We were waiting because we have, we were preparing our own rebuttals. We would have told him how it was purely on account of his being elected deputy president alongside the president that made them to get away with that. Right. Because the High Court, that just judge that the deputy president is trying to impugn about ulterior motives, asked the deputy president before he was even elected, what do you have any documentary evidence to show that you supplied anything? When you appeal a case that you have lost in the High Court, you don't introduce new evidence. You go and demonstrate to the Court of Appeal how the High Court made certain errors in arriving at their decision. What were we told at the Court of Appeal? That the Asset Recovery Agency had, somehow discovered new evidence that the deputy president had supplied. And that's why his threat, the deputy president's threat, to file a case against Justice Maina is hot air. And he cannot follow up on it because he has no content, he has no substance whatsoever.
Well, you have actually spoken to my curiosity, and I want to borrow your thought on this one. You talked about disobeying court orders. Of course, we have already seen one has already been disobeyed. And even as we speak right now, the public hearing on this, the controversial housing, now it's a tax. The public hearing has already begun yesterday, despite the court order actually stopping that process from happening. Well, that is just one instance. And the president said that he will disobey court orders that he thinks are corrupt and actually perpetrated by impunity. Well, that one itself, it sets some sort of, a bad precedence from what we can see. And this now talks about the democracy as a country that we have made some milestone achievement as far as protecting and safeguarding our constitution is concerned. From observers' point of view, are you concerned with this current trend of what is happening?
Of course, it is very concerning. I'm concerned, and a number of Kenyans are. What I know is that when knowing how each of the 3 arms of government are established under the Constitution, the judiciary will finally, have the last laugh. When the former President Uhuru Kenyatta refused to appoint judges, I think that's the main score on which he disobeyed court orders. And the other one if I may offer, is that there has been a law on the NGOs. There has been a law called the Public Benefit Organizations Act, which was assented to by the late President Mwai Kibaki,
Okay.
on 13th of February 2013, President Uhuru refused for the 10 years that he was in power, alongside William Ruto, to operationalize the law. So that is another issue on which Uhuru remained in contempt for the 10 years. When President Uhuru left office, President Ruto appointed the judges. So in the end, whatever they try to do, you see, they can do their public participation.
Okay.
Those views will be brought before Parliament, and that law will be passed. And of course, the president will happily assent to it. We citizens are waiting for that law. The law that will emanate from the public participation forums that happen today and that may follow tomorrow and the day after. We are waiting for that law because currently we cannot challenge it. We cannot challenge it. Of course, we will go to court. Those who are going to court will cite the parliament for contempt, but we are waiting to declare whichever law will be passed based on the public participations that have happened today and tomorrow as unconstitutional.
Okay.
Having happened at a time when the courts had put a temporary injunction on that process. So it's a complete waste of time, a complete waste of public resources, because in the end, those laws, no law can pass the test of constitutionality if it has been undertaken in an unconstitutional manner.
All right.
And more so when, you know, the word is out there for anybody.
All right.
Even a newborn baby will know that, you know, something illegal is happening, you know, in the name of public participation, and for which the courts had issued an injunction.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the genesis of why we are having this discussion. Of course, President William Ruto feels that the court, or rather the judiciary, is out for him. And he has criticized the judiciary for being corrupt. And he has even vowed to actually, you know, weed out corruption in judiciary. Now, talk to me about this corruption. Do you think that executive is being unfairly targeted?
I mean, it's completely unfair. You know, you cannot say people are corrupt, and you are not saying who in particular. I know. I've had occasion to work with the current president when he was Secretary General of Kano. He is somebody who believes in transactional politics.
All right.
So the mere fact that he released the money, the Judiciary Fund, you remember the 3 billion, the mere fact that he appointed judges that his former boss and predecessor did not want to appoint, for him makes him to have a sense of entitlement. That, you know, I've been nicer to you. That basically is what the president is saying. Look, I'm the one who gave you 3 billion to set up the Judiciary Fund. I'm the one who appointed judges that my predecessor did not appoint. How dare you make decisions that go contrary to, you know. So that's the kind of thing. So for him, that was a bribe.
All right.
Enough to make judges make anything brought before them, as long as, you know, the executive is involved, the president must have his way. And he's coming to painfully to realize a bit late in the day that that's not how our constitution works.
All right.
And the president, no matter how much noise he makes, at the end of the day, because even if of course all these noises are aimed at intimidating the Court of Appeal, there's a decision expected on 26th of this month, and the president believes that because he made a bit of noise and the Court of Appeal extended the stay on the housing levy, he thinks that more noise will make the Court of Appeal set aside.
All right.
The issues in that law, the Social Health Insurance Fund, are so fundamental, so unconstitutional, that even, you know, a judge who did not go to school but somehow got lucky to be appointed a judge will see the unconstitutionality of some of those issues that are in contention.
Okay. And do you agree that maybe the president might have a point when he said that there is corruption in judiciary? I mean, this is something that even Martha Koome acknowledged this on Monday during the press that he released about the current state of affairs, and even pinpoint some case examples, the number of cases that are pending, the ones that they have dismissed of, the corruption allegation, those judicial officers that maybe their names might have been, tainted.
Of course,
So when the president talks about judiciary being corrupt, do you think the president has a point?
He will only have a point when he proceeds to table evidence. But talking about it in political rallies, the deputy president, his own deputy, had offered, had volunteered to lead the charge. Today, what does he do? He backtracks because he prefers dialogue. This vague thing about dialogue. What are you dialoguing about? You are going to allow the judiciary, the executive to say how they want the judgments. We know in this country there are some judgments that have been read out by the judges that have been written by the executive.
All right.
Is that what they want to meet about? Not in this republic. Because the judges know, individually and collectively, that their integrity is at stake. And people can see, even when the deputy president was left off the hook over some payments that he had received from county governments, I know for a fact that it is not procedural for the Court of Appeal to entertain evidence that was not made available to the High Court, upon which the High Court, came to the finding that, the deputy president and former MP for Madeira had supplied hewa or air to those counties.
Okay.
And there was conflict of interest, of course.
Okay.
Because some of those counties involved, counties where his own blood brother was the boss. So what we are saying is, if the president indeed has a point, why not take it to the next step?
Okay.
And say, have this, President Uhuru, when he had issues with some judges, he claimed to have received the names of, people from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which was itself very unprocedural. Right. But when he acted and removed some cabinet ministers, you remember Charity Ngilu, the current, secretary to the cabinet, Koskei was a minister, the minister for agriculture. She got removed. Chirichiru is now in energy, got removed from the cabinet.
All right.
The President Uhuru claimed then that he had received a dossier from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
All right.
We want His Excellency President William Ruto also to come up and tell us that he is now the second recipient of another dossier from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, instead of maligning, mudslinging the judiciary from political platforms where judges do not have the same privilege to defend themselves.
Well, let's tackle another very important topic, and that is, the dialogue. This dialogue has been welcomed by many, and of course, some have even criticized this, terming it at, some says, like, if I can quote the opposition leader Raila Odinga, that the dialogue between the executive and the judiciary, if it will be allowed to happen, then that might compromise the independence of the judiciary, and it might even or even shake the integrity of the judiciary and even the nation as a whole. From where you sit, do you think it's necessary for our country, for the sake of unity, peace, and of course, the very objective that we have these three arms of the government, so that Kenya can run smoothly and we can have a peaceful country, that we can say that we are proud to be Kenyans because we have a working the three arms of the government? Do you support the dialogue?
There's nothing wrong with the dialogue. In any case, the three arms of government cannot work in isolation from each other.
Okay.
But it all depends on the format.
Okay.
What kind of format is that dialogue going to take? If the president wants to meet the judiciary and they set up a platform, like we have had the National Dialogue Committee on proposed constitutional and legal reforms,
all right,
and there's a setup in Bomas, broadcast live, we have no problem with that. We have no problem with that. So if that's the kind of dialogue that the president wants and the judiciary, let them go back to Bomas. And this time it will be clear it's about the rule of law. Let them invite stakeholders to reassert that, the constitution is clear. That, this is how Kenyans are going to exercise their right under Article 3 of the Constitution, to defend the Constitution. Kenyans have a right to exercise their right under Article 20 and 21 to file cases in court and so on. And the judiciary is properly guided under Article 23 of the Constitution on how. We have no problem in such kind of dialogue. So let that dialogue happen on condition that it is happening in an open, broadcast live, so that KUTV can also be there to broadcast to their viewers and listeners.
All right.
That, this is but this thing of, going to State House, which is, of course, under repair. Our president has no money to subsidize oil, fuel and everything, but he has enough to repair State House. So wherever that dialogue is going to happen, we have no problem with it. As long as stakeholders are invited to give their views in the manner in which the national dialogue has happened on proposed reforms at the Bomas of Kenya.
All right. Hypothetically speaking, let's say this dialogue happens without the set maybe conditions and requirements that maybe you think should the format that you as you put it should take. It happened between president and of course as the head of state and let's say Chief Justice as the the head of the judiciary, and it happens. So what is your biggest fear? You see, it is the manner in which it is going to degenerate the integrity and perceived independence. Some of these things are perceptional. Kenyans today know that the executive is not for them and has never been for them. Despite all the lies during elections of Pesa Mfukoni, Kenyans today are poorer. So they have completely lost trust in the executive. They have also completely lost trust in the legislature. The only arm of government in which Kenyans still have hope and in which they have always sought and found refuge is the judiciary. Now, if the judiciary were to go and meet, because basically, that dialogue is called negotiating. They are going to negotiate justice. Whose justice? The justice of Kenyans. And the president's right to have his way, no matter how unconstitutional, how illegal some of his processes are. Let me tell you, the president cannot say that whose projects? What is development that is not democratically owned by Kenyans? Okay.
The reason Kenyans are going to court is because they don't like those projects. Okay. So for whom is the president trying to implement them? For himself? If he wants to implement projects for himself and makes himself happy. But we don't know that. We don't know that. But the president claims, we know. The president claims that he's doing those projects on behalf of Kenyans. Kenyans don't want those projects. So what are these projects that the president thinks he must implement on our behalf and with our taxes, but without our consent?
Okay. Because we are running out of time, and I would like you to take this as your closing remark. So do you think if the judiciary and of course the executive have that dialogue, maybe it will compromise the independence of the judiciary, and the faith that Kenyans have on judiciary will somehow, fail?
Definitely, it will fizzle, because, the reason why Kenyans have faith in the judiciary is because they can today pinpoint at the grounds in the constitution, grounds on the law, on which a decision has been made by the court. We know the president's grievance, and he has made it clear out there that he's not happy with those decisions. Yet those decisions have been based on the constitution and the law. So if the president meets the chief justice, and all of a sudden we see a change in the kind of decisions that the judiciary is going to make, then it's definitely going to. And Kenyans are very interesting. even before those decisions are made, as
Okay.
long as they know that a meeting has happened between
Okay.
the Chief Justice and the President,
Okay.
they'll say, amekula ugali. That is the Kenyan perception.
Well, thank
of
you,
those kind of
because we are really, running out of time, and I'm afraid this is where we'll have to leave it for today.
Thank you.